What's going on, team? Who's ready for another stock market movers? I'm your host, Money Mitch. Let's dive into today's show. We got a lot to talk about. Let's run through the topics here. Amazon Care, we'll touch that. Tesla stock split. Why are China stocks up? Plug Power and Amazon deal. Hyliion in. We'll go ahead and give you guys the future of trucking video that they recently put out. Stock market gainers. We'll take a look at what is moving, what was hot and what was not. Earnings from Nvidia, Snowflake, Salesforce, Splunk, Dollar General, Peloton. We'll also touch a little bit on the Boeing news that's out there. We'll take a look at the housing stocks after getting an upgrade by Bank of America. We also have our guests, like always. We got Tuan Nguyen, Ph.D. Economist at RSM. So we'll definitely be talking about inflation and different things that you guys can be watching on the supply chains. Welcome to Stock Market Movers. I'm your host, Money Mitch, and let's dive into today's action. There are 3 ways to make a living in this business. Be first, be smarter, or cheat. I can't help you cheat, but I can give you the informational edge to help you succeed in the markets. Welcome to Stock Market Movers. All the market moving headlines and expert opinions every day. They say money is the oxygen of capitalism, and I want to breathe more than any man alive. Let's go. Let's get it, guys. I'm here for you guys, just like you guys are there for me. Like always, one of the things that I like to do is try to get through all the headlines and, of course, get to the expert opinions that you guys need to hear from so you guys can stay in the informational edge. We're going to keep watching what's going on in the market. If there's anything that catches your radar, now's your chance, guys. Throw it up in the chat. I'll definitely catch it and make sure that we cover it here on Stock Market Movers. All right, let's go ahead. Let's dive into the first topic of the day, which was on this Amazon Care. Let's see how Amazon actually traded today. I saw it actually up, and it was kind of interesting. I mean, I don't think this was something that they expected to see, but let's take a look at it. Let me share my screen here. Amazon getting a little bit of a lift off of this headline. I didn't expect them to get the lift on it, but let's talk about that. Amazon Care will no longer be offered after December 31st. Amazon Health Services Senior Vice President Lindsay said that the decision to shutter Amazon Care wasn't made lightly, only became clear after many months of careful consideration. This was reported by Greek Wire, which was also cited in an internal company memo. Teladoc and Amwell did gain on this kind of news of Amazon's plans to shut down their telehealth service. But just to keep in mind, right, last month, Amazon did say that they were acquiring One Life Healthcare, which is 1M, if you want to take a look at the stock. So that's 1M. This is that One Life Healthcare. And you guys see this stock going up today. One of the things that this talked about is that this does operate under One Medical and does provide primary care services and also does virtual kind of telehealth themselves. So one thing to kind of think about is, did they go away from that Amazon Care to eventually just move on over to One Life? Well, that's what we're going to be waiting to hear from. We'll see what happens from Amazon. Let's continue going. Let's talk about what everyone wanted to take a look at today. Tesla, would it get the push? Would it get some lift today? And you can see it's actually been trading down in the morning. Had kind of a attempt to go towards the high. Of course, 304.38 here is where we want to see it get back up, but it's just been kind of weak all morning long here. Of course, this is coming after the stock split, and some people were expecting it to run into the stock split. It kind of ran yesterday a little bit up, but not what we expected to see. We thought they would get a little bit more of a run, but it's just been declining now. We'll see what happens here in Tesla. All right, catching up with you guys in the chat. What's going on? Does Money Mitch have a Twitter handle? Yes, I do. I will let you guys know that. That's right here, at Money Mitch BZ. You can go ahead and look me up on Twitter. Make sure that you add me. Now, one thing I will say is my shows are probably better than my Twitter is. That's one thing I need to work on a little bit more, is putting out more information for you guys on Twitter. A lot of times I'll put in like trade ideas and things like that. But the best things that you guys can do is just catch me right here on Benzinga. That's where I try to cover it all and make sure that I'm touching everything for you guys out there to stay in the informational edge. Now let's get out of Tesla. Let's take a look at why China stocks were up. And I was wondering myself. And so what did I do? Well, I opened up Benzinga Pro to try to find out what was going on out there. And then I found through that a headline from the New York Journal talking about the U.S. and China are nearing agreement that would allow American accounting regulators to travel to Hong Kong to inspect and audit records of Chinese companies, especially the ones that are listed on the New York Stock Exchange. This is something that we need to keep on watch, but let's take a look at how some of these kind of stocks perform today. You can take a look here at JD having a really nice little pop on up there to the 67, now pulling back there. We'll see if it can get back above 65s. That's really where I'd want to kind of get above. If it can get above there, could make another run there. Let's take a look at Baba. Alibaba did get back above that 100, trying to hold on to that 100. We'll see if it's able to do so. PDD also having a good day, move up towards 59.50s, and this could really kind of get up maybe some of the EV makers like NIO, XPEV, right? This had come down hard yesterday. LI. Take a look at some Chinese stocks. They are getting some lift off of this headline. Am I going to be one that's going to be trading these Chinese stocks? I will tell you right off the bat, no. I just feel like they're way too high risk because we could get a swing in political issues that are out there. But to each his own. If you're day trading these, power to you. I just wouldn't be able to sleep overnight if I was overnight one of these Chinese stocks. So for that being said, I'm going to probably just go ahead and stick out of this trade. But it has been moving and could continue to get some lift. PDD, one of the strongest ones today. We'll see if it can continue pushing. All right, getting out of the China stock news, let's keep going here. Do me the favor, guys, if you guys are watching right now, hit that like button and like it on up. We're going to keep going through some of the headlines here, but I'd appreciate it if you guys can smash that up so that we can get some more viewers in here. Let's go. All right, let's go towards the next topic. We're going to get into Plug Power here. I don't know if you guys were watching this morning, but definitely got the lift with this mention. And I mean, whenever you get a mention with a bigger stock, right, one of the big boys, right, whether it be a small company mentioning Apple, or in this case, Plug mentioning Amazon, that's always going to get a little bit of love. Let's take a look how the stock actually traded in the intraday action. You can see it here when it spiked in the morning around 9:15, went up as high as 32.05, and then pulled on back. Now has been going sideways. This is one that I'd watch towards the close. Could catch a bid and make its way back towards 30.50. It's definitely something that I'm going to keep on watching, but let's give you the news on what was said. So Plug Power's stock surged after the Amazon struck a deal with the fuel cell maker to power some of its operations. Amazon said that Plug would supply 10,950 tons of green hydrogen per year for its transportation building operations starting in 2025. Amazon expects Plug to provide enough green hydrogen to power 30,000 forklifts and 800 long-haul trucks. As a part of this deal, Plug said it would grant Amazon a warrant to buy up to 16 million shares at an exercise price of $22.98 for the first 9 million shares. So this definitely leaves Amazon with an option now if they want to go ahead and take a stake here in Plug Power. I think that the price that they gave them, at $22, especially to get, 9 million shares there, it's definitely going to be something to keep on watch. If Plug Powers can really get back to, say, 35, 40, I could see Amazon taking their shot. This is something to just keep on watch the next couple of weeks to see if it continues to work towards the upside, and then take a look to see what happens with Amazon mentions. But like always, this gets us into a deeper dive into the story about whether it be about green hydrogen, whether it be about green nitrogen, whether it be about what we're going to do in the future of trucking. Really, the battle starts talking, right? I mean, a lot of people are looking at the long run for fuel cell technology and hydrogen technology to take over the natural gas situation. One of the stocks that we're about to go into, I'm going to play a video here from Hyliion. Of course, the future of trucking is what they're talking about. This is one of the companies that is trying to battle in here, right? They have the LNG. Of course, they're having a natural gas in their trucking right now, but their mentality is to move to fuel cell and hydrogen. And what the idea here is to have a step A and then eventually move on over when that technology seems to make sense. Plug here talking about, extending that hydrogen use, and they've been trying to do that for years and years. Of course, it is better for the environment, and so that's why it's one of the forefronts, and you're seeing Amazon step up. But remember, this isn't starting to 2025, so we're still a little bit of ways away from here. But we're going to bring you into our first video today, which is going to be about Hyliion's electric truck overview and the future of trucking. Once again, I will let you guys know they didn't pay me to do this. One thing is I've gone to their factory, so I'm really keeping a close eye on what happens in the story at Hyliion. They put out this video on the 19th, so I'm going to go ahead and show you guys this. Check it on out. Let me know what you guys think and throw it up in the chat if you guys feel that Hyliion is a good option here, or maybe you guys like Plug. Or maybe it's just a theme and you're trying to follow it. Maybe it's fuel cell that you like, or maybe it's another trucking stock. Throw it up in the chat. What I'll do is I'm going to play the video here, and you guys in the chat, talk to me about it. Let's go ahead. Let's have a conversation on the story of the future of trucking. If you think that you know which stock will lead, throw it up in the chat. I'd love to catch the conversation. All right, so I'm going to reshare here so that you guys can see this tab here. Let me go ahead and share the audio. Boom, boom, make it full screen here, add it to the stream, and let's go ahead. Let's dive on in.
In this episode, we're going to show you what electric semi-trucks look like close up and in person. So as we think about electric semi-trucks, as we've mentioned before, you've got the three different variants of BEV plug-in, Hypertruck ERX, natural gas range extender, as well as fuel cell vehicles. And so as we go through this truck, I'm going to explain it both as what components stay the same, as well as what is different amongst those three different platforms. So to start it off, there are really 5 different things that we need to consider in an electric semi-truck. The first is, what drive system are you using? Are you using e-axles or a central mount? The next is the actual battery pack. Third is, where is your electricity coming from? Fourth is the software integration and some key differentiations of what you can do with data. And then fifth, and maybe most important, is what does the vehicle look like? Is it a brand new vehicle? Is it an existing truck that OEMs are already producing today? So those are the 5 aspects that we're going to dive into to showcase what electric semi-trucks are like. The first aspect to look at on the vehicle is, how do you actually apply power to the road? So to start, in a conventional diesel-powered truck normally has an engine under the hood and then a drive shaft that comes back to the front axle and then is also connected to the rear axle to be able to apply power to both of these axles from the engine under the hood. In an electric truck, it's different. You have 2 different options. The first is a central mount motor solution, and the second is an e-axle solution. So let's first start with a central mount motor solution. So it's actually architected very similar to a conventional diesel truck, where you have conventional rear axles, and then you have a small drive shaft that would then be connected to an electric motor that would be mounted about here in the vehicle, and then that electric motor would drive both of these axles. You also need either a 2 or 3-speed transmission on that electric motor so that you can be able to apply torque at all different speeds. Now, on this vehicle, though, we're using e-axles. So the way the e-axles work is, now your axles are actually totally independent. There's no connection between the two. You would then have an electric motor hooked to the front of it, as well as a 2-speed transmission in each axle, so that you can apply power at any speed. At low speeds, you have extremely high torque, and then on the highway, you also have high torque as well. So you really have two different options in an electric vehicle of how do you want to apply power down to the road. The next aspect to look at is the battery pack. So on all the EVs we've seen in the space, the batteries are mounted to the frame rails. So on this truck, we have a battery pack on the left side as well as right side of the frame rail. The biggest difference you're going to see is how large are these battery packs on these different EV trucks. And this really depends on how much EV range you're trying to get out of the vehicle. We're seeing for BEV plug-in trucks, there's usually a target of around 150, 200, maybe up to 250 miles out of the vehicle, which is going to mean that you need a very large battery. And with some of the OEMs, we're actually seeing them not only do battery packs on the outside of the frame rails, but also fill the center of the frame rails as well with batteries. We've also seen some of the EVs actually elongating the frame rails pretty substantially so that they can store more battery pack. Now, on the range extender truck, like what we're looking at here, one of the advantages is you actually can get away with a very small battery pack. And that's why you can see we're not filling up the entire frame rail space, because on our Hypertruck ERX, we're coming to market with only 75 miles of EV range, and then that 1,000 miles of total range is coming from the range extender on board. Now, once you choose what size of battery pack you need, you then need to choose what type of batteries you want. So what manufacturer do you want to come from, as well as what chemistry of battery do you want? You have different chemistries like NMC, LFP, LTO, and you really need to look at the characteristics of the vehicle and what you're trying to achieve. Some of them have higher energy density, some of them have longer life, and then there's different safety characteristics along with each one as well. So each manufacturer of electric vehicles is really trying to choose which battery makes sense for them. And one of the biggest drivers is how much range are you trying to get out of just the battery pack. The third aspect to look at is where does the power come from that charges the battery packs? So first, with a BEV plug-in truck, it's pretty simple. You have a plug on board the vehicle that connects into a wall charger outlet. We've seen these plugs located anywhere from just behind the driver's step to all the way back near the end of the fairing, near the e-axles. Really doesn't matter where the plug is located. It still serves the same purpose in order to be able to charge the batteries. Now, in a range extender truck, the whole philosophy is you're bringing that power plant on board the vehicle with you in order to trickle charge the batteries. Now, one thing to mention is even with our Hypertruck ERX, we're actually offering both. We do have a wall outlet charger, as well as we've got the engine under the hood. So on this vehicle, it is a natural gas engine that has an electric motor hooked to the rear of it, that all its purpose is to produce electricity to send a constant trickle charge back to the battery pack. Same exact philosophy if you're looking at a fuel cell vehicle. As opposed to having a Cummins engine here, you're going to have a fuel cell stack, and that stack is there to constantly produce electricity to trickle charge the battery packs. And what we've seen with fuel cell vehicles is that we're utilizing the same space up here to put the fuel cell. One aspect to consider with fuel cell trucks is you need a tremendous amount of radiators and heat rejection from the vehicle. So we've seen not only do you need the big radiator under the front of the hood, we're also seeing that people are mounting radiators to the back of cab in order to be able to get rid of that heat that comes from a fuel cell. So ultimately, a few different ways that we can produce electricity or actually charge these vehicles. But arguably, where the electricity comes from is probably the most critical thing as you're considering electric vehicles. The next aspect to look at is the software of the vehicle. Now, there's a tremendous amount that goes into what drives these vehicles, the data behind it, and we see it as actually one of the things that's going to be a key differentiator for electric vehicle makers. So you can look at the embedded software, which is how do you actually connect things like the axles to the battery packs and the batteries to the charger. That's all the foundational code that makes the vehicle work. That's then coupled with what are you actually showing to the driver, what's on your displays, how much information are you giving to them, and how much are you letting them interact with the vehicle. You also have the data side of things and how much information are you generating, what sensors are you looking at on board the vehicle, and how much of that information are you sending up to the cloud. Now, once you have the data, you can either process information locally on the vehicle, or you can do it remotely in the cloud. And this is going to be a differentiator of how different OEMs approach utilizing that data and seeing if we can do things like predictive maintenance in order to be able to improve uptime of the trucks. The next is you can look at the advanced algorithms on board the vehicle and what features and benefits you can provide. So for instance, in the Hypertruck, one of the things we do is we actually map out the terrain ahead of the vehicle, and then that allows us to optimize the battery packs to be able to hit the base of a hill with a full charge so that you can have as much power as you need while going up the hill. Or the reverse of that is if you know a big downhill is coming up, you want to deplete your battery packs before you get there so that you can capture as much energy as possible through regen braking. You can also leverage the GPS location of these vehicles. So, are you near a port or in a port, or are you near a warehouse that you're making a delivery to? And you can use that to determine, do you want to use the generator on board the vehicle or not? So for instance, we've seen overseas in London in particular, we're starting to see zero emission zones pop up where you can't have any pollution, any tailpipe emissions in those areas. So this will allow us to control the vehicle so that we know if the truck's in that zone, you don't have the engine on and you're just running off the battery pack. The last thing to consider is the actual vehicle itself. And there's two different approaches here. You can either build a brand new vehicle from the ground up, or you can leverage an existing chassis that are already made today. Not to say which one is right and wrong, but just two different approaches. And what we saw is different timelines for how long it takes to develop, as well as what's the capital needed in order to bring a new vehicle to the market. So there's your in-depth look at electric semi-trucks and some of the key differentiations around what components are being utilized on each different vehicle. Thanks for watching.
All right, guys, there you guys have it. Hyliion with the future of trucking. I hope that you guys enjoyed that presentation. Like I said before it started, I did not get paid a single dime to show this. I'm not trying to pump Hyliion by any means, have no investment in Hyliion, but I do think it's an important thing. And what I love is the way that Thomas Healy is able to actually explain the industry that he is in. You want to hear that from a CEO, right? If you want to talk to a CEO about their company, about their industry, you want them to know the full grasp of what is out there to offer. Like you see them, they're right now running on natural gas, but they're leaning towards hydrogen in the future. It just needs to make sense. Right now, the infrastructure doesn't make sense for them to go about that because you can't just get hydrogen on each corner right now. Now, natural gas is more readily available. So it's interesting that they went that route first, but the mentality of going towards the next route, which would be fuel cell technology or hydrogen technology. And so I just wanted to get into that because we just talked about Plug with hydrogen power and them trying to make a deal with Amazon. Well, you're going to still continue to see this, right? This is a theme that is moving forward. And a lot of this is with the electric semis. How can they get around not just plugging into the grid? A great question by Janine here. And she mentioned that, what about the grid? What about the grid, right? If we're going to get these semi trucks to really plug in fully electric battery semi trucks, that's going to cause issues on the grid. And that's one of the major concerns you're hearing out there. So I just wanted to bring the stories and the future of trucking. Doesn't mean it's Hyliion exactly. It could be some other trucks, but one thing that's for certain is I love the way he broke it down there, explaining the different types of trucks that are available and what are some of their issues and why they feel that they went the right route, which is going to natural gas. I think it's interesting that you don't need to plug it in. That was my first kind of question when I was looking at these vehicles, but I even got to drive it, right? And that's really what I would say would lean you over to understanding Hyliion, but not everybody's going to get that opportunity. So I hope you guys enjoyed that video. All right, let's get out of that talk. There's a lot more headlines to get into. Not going to get stuck on the future of trucking. Let's go towards what was hot and what was not. And let's take a look at the overall market to see what was moving today. And then we're going to go ahead and get into our next interview at 1:45. But we got a lot to talk about before we get into that. All right, so first things first, let's take a look at what was hot and what was not. All right, so I'll just redo this right here. You can see actually change percentage from the open, technology getting the bid today and getting some bounce. It's kind of interesting, right? You wouldn't expect it hearing what you saw in NVIDIA's numbers to see technology leading right now. Just an interesting note to notice there. Let's get into some of these stocks that were doing well in technology today. Let's look at the high cap ones. What is going on here? Well, NVIDIA up 3%, bouncing back strong today as it's getting on up there. You can see it on the 15-minute chart here, continuing to get the lift there. AVGO getting some lift there. Meta getting some lift there. It looks like the tech stocks not doing bad. Look at AMD up 4%. So a lot of these tech names getting that big bounce up today, even Intel getting a nice little lift. So we'll see what happens with these tech stocks. Can they keep running? The Qs were looking great here early on. Now they're trying to get back up through that 318, get out of the range. If it can start closing above the range, maybe we can start closing some of this shadow that you had on the gap down move. And you can see we've gone up in that move, but will we actually close above, let's say, the 318.27? That's going to be the important part for the bulls. What is another area that's been strong lately? Basic materials. And you guys know I like to work backwards. We go from sector to industry to specific stocks. What do you see from new traders that are out there? A lot of times they're going to work the other way around. They're going to work forward. They're going to look for a hot trending stock. Then they're going to try to find out why this stock is moving. They'll probably be looking into the industry and then eventually into the sector. I like working backwards. We work at what is moving, where's the movement, where are the eyes, where are the investors rotating the money, and then we work backwards. Then we look at industries. Was it the whole sector that was hot? Was it specific industries? Then we go ahead and we work into the micro outlooks, which is our into the stocks. So macro to micro is what I like to do. All right, so let's go into that. Let's take a look at the basic materials. What was strong there? You can see here what led lumber and wood production coming back. So the stock that you guys can watch is WFG. This one had a big run when lumber was strong last time, and it's starting to make its move back. We'll see what happens there. Copper really starting to get back up there. That's FCX if you wanted to take a look at that one. Yeah, it's getting off the ground, so you guys can see it here. Now it's starting to hold here, this nice breakout. So I would want it to hold 3150s on any pullback. Look for opportunities towards that 32. We'll see what happens there in copper. Steel was an area that I was looking at it this pre-market and was calling out NUE. And not a bad move there. It started moving back above the 140.50s. That was the level that I was looking for it to kind of push above. It got above that and held it perfectly on the pullback. Look at this pullback towards the VWAP, right back up there. Seems like the steel trade has been going really well. And a lot of this coming off of the Cleveland Cliff news that was given yesterday. And this is why it's so important to stay with the news, right? Cleveland Cliff talked about $75 higher ton. And then when that started coming on up, when they mentioned that, look at yesterday's pop. You got a big pop in Cleveland Cliff, and today it continues going, and it's not just one steel player, another one, Steel Dynamics here, getting a good lift. So that's why it's important to keep up with those headlines. You could have been able to catch this rotation. Also, one of the things I recommend is our live trading stream where we do talk a lot about the rotations that I see on out there. Consumer cyclical, the last leading sector. I usually go through the top three and the bottom three here. Consumer cyclical getting some lift today. Specialty retail, apparel manufacturing getting a little bit of a push up. Resorts and casinos. Look how when you work backwards, you can find a whole industry that was hot today. Well, resorts and casinos, the lowest one today is still up. They're all up here, every single one. So I have 20 items on here. 19 of them are stocks. One of them is an index, and 19 of them in the green in casino and resorts. And that's why it's important to find rotation. All right, what was down today? Well, down today is energy and utilities. So utilities just taking more of that kind of sideways step approach. You can see it here in the industry. It pulled on back. Eventually, I think this comes stair-stepping its way back. Energy just took a kind of a rest period here. That's what I would call it here when you're seeing XOM or XOM here, ExxonMobil, pulling on back here. It tried to even get to 100. It was already at 99.86 from a move where on Monday we were down to 91.86. So it's already made a nice move on up here. It's been about 7% move. So if it retraces a little bit towards, let's say the 3.5, that would be a 50% retracement, somewhere between the 96 in the 96 to 97 range. That's where I'll be looking to maybe buy the dip in some of these oil names. Chevron, how's Chevron doing? I know that one had continued into the green. It's trying to get back up there, filled up through this shadow. It's right back into there. And now we're going to look for it to start holding 165 on pullbacks. Right now it's at 163. You could see how it tried to tick back up there, made a couple of highs at 164.90s. You got 164.68 here, or 81. Really trying to get back to that 165. Couldn't do it today. I'll keep an eye out on that tomorrow. Oxy is the last one I'll cover there, as you're seeing this pull back, and it's just normal. I mean, when a stock extends so much, it's okay to have a pullback day. This is why we always need to be careful about chasing runners. All right, time to catch up what's going on in the chat. What do you guys think about what's moving out there? Let's keep going. Snowflake, I see you guys still talking about Snowflake. We'll take a look at that one in a couple of seconds here. X, Cleveland Cliff, FCX, AA. Hey, not looking too bad there. Let's take a look. BTU short, says Daniel. Dollar is still holding very strong against the euro. Well, hey, let's take a look there. How did coal do today? Coal, you guys can see here, it's actually up on the day. BTU is red, but there is some other ones that are into the green. The ones that I like are like AMR and BTU, but those are kind of the leaders. Another one that's kind of doing well today is NC. You got CEIX. It's pulling on back right now. We'll see what happens on coal. This has been a really strong move in coal in the last, let's say, 19 days. So a little sideways action day. It doesn't look too bad. BTU looking like it's trying to hold the pullback here. So it does have a trend line that it's trying to hold here. I'd look for a move back to 26. 26 is the level to watch there. If it can get to that 26, I'd be looking for some pullback buys. We'll see what happens. All right, getting out of what was hot and what was not. In a few minutes, we'll be getting into our next interview. Let's dive into our earnings of the day. First one up, NVIDIA, right? I know a lot of people were asking like me this morning and were wondering, why is NVIDIA up on this report? It just doesn't make sense. Well, that's how it is sometimes in finance, right? Not everything is going to make sense in the stock market, but let's talk about what their earnings had here. EPS at 51 cents, missing the $1.25 estimate. Sales at 6.7 billion, missing the 8.10 billion estimate. Gaming segment revenue was at 2.04 billion, a decline of 33% year over year, and a 44% drop from the first quarter. Now, one thing is NVIDIA did guide down their third quarter revenue of 5.9 billion plus or minus 2%, about 15% below expectations. They also started dropping in their gross margins. This is something that you can look at when you're diving deeper into the financials of a company. You can take a look. Over the last year, the kind of gross margins have been dropping from around 67% to 46%. So you're seeing their profitability slowly but surely come on down. Now, profits are starting to get back into the sense where the EPS was about 50 cents, right? Well, last time that the EPS was trading around this range, NVIDIA was trading as low as $50 back then. And so now you got to start asking yourself on a valuation basis, should NVIDIA be trading at 170 or 178, which is more than 80 times Q2 earnings? That doesn't seem to make sense too much for me there. But definitely NVIDIA bouncing back today. We'll see if it can get back above the 190. That's why I have this trend line above here. If it can get back into this range, we get into this zone, we're going to start looking bullish on NVIDIA. But until then, I'm going to still be in the bear camp. Doesn't seem to make sense why we had this nice push up today. But to each his own, right? Like I always talk about, the markets don't need to be logical on their move. And you could see it actually got hit hard in the after hours, but recovered all that and is even higher than yesterday's close. So interesting to see that pushback in NVIDIA. Snowflake, let's go to Snow. I know that you guys love to talk about this one. This one actually holding up really well. This looks like kind of similar like we saw Palo Alto do when it did its move, when it shot up and kept going here. So let's go back to that stock here. Snow, you could see it. It's trying to hold on up there and take that next step up here. Is this kind of more of a gift? I think it's kind of a gift here. I mean, when a stock gives you overnight, 19% move, now is up 21%. Seems like a gift to me, but we'll see if Snow can really keep moving here. EPS came in at a loss of 70 cents, sales at 497.2 million, and beating the 467.15 million estimate. Snowflake sees Q3 product revenue at 500 million to 505 million on the high end, and full year 23 product revenue at 1.95 billion and 1.91 billion. We'll see what happens there on Snowflake if it's able to continue to drive today. All right, let's keep going. Let's go to Salesforce now. That's the next one up, and it's trying to make its way back here, especially on a tech-heavy day towards the upside. Sales coming in here, Salesforce.com, Q2 EPS at $1.19, beating the $1.02 estimate. Sales at $7.72 billion, beating the $7.7 billion estimate. Salesforce announced a $10 billion buyback program, but they lowered their guidance on Q3 EPS, on Q3 sales, also full year 23 adjusted EPS lowering, and their sales lowering for the full year 23. You guys can see there, definitely not what you wanted to see from Salesforce. Will this catch the dip? I'm not so positive, but really it's interesting to see that a lot of the tech names are up today, even though a lot of these tech names got hit hard. Next one up, Splunk. Let's keep it going. There's a lot to talk about here. SPLK, you guys can check that chart out, and it's doing kind of similar, just going sideways here. It didn't really go up, but let's talk a little bit about what Splunk had here. EPS at 9 cents, beating the 35 loss estimate there. Sales at 799.0 million, beating the 747.55 million estimate, raising their guidance. Splunk sees full year 23 revenue guidance at 3.35 billion to a 3.4 billion on the high end versus 3.33 billion estimate. So even higher than their low end there. Should have given them the lift, and it's kind of interesting, but it's not getting the push. Some people are thinking that it didn't get the push because it's kind of related to snow. I did see comments out there by Jim Cramer mentioning that. I'm not so positive about that. I just think at the end of the day, it's just not in favor with investors right now. Dollar General, the next one up, DG. Would it get through today? It is trying to come back here. This one had a nice setup above the 260 and just rejected hard here. Let's go ahead. Let's take a look here. EPS coming in at $2.98, beating the $2.93. Sales at 9.4 billion, beating the 9.39 billion estimate. Dollar General increased share buyback authorization by $2 billion and raised sales outlook. Dollar General management provided guidance for full year 2022, expecting earnings between 11.39 and 11.59 per share. And so we're going to keep an eye on to see what happens here, but guidance not looking too bad here. And it is trying to come back, but we'll see. It needs a long way to actually get back into the bullish tune and get back above that 260. The daily setup was looking good. It just rejected here 1, 2, 3 times. Couldn't get back above that 260. Next one up, let's go to Peloton. You guys, who has a Peloton in the chat? Let me know. Do you guys know anybody that has a Peloton, or have you used a Peloton? Throw a 1 in the chat if that's what you have done, or you know somebody that uses a Peloton. Put a 2 if you don't know a single person that has a Peloton. And then put a 3 if you're interested. Just want to take a little bit of a poll here from the chat. You guys let me know what you guys think on Peloton while I go through the numbers. All right, let's dive on in here. Let's get to it. Peloton getting a lift there in the pre-market, but it coming right back down here. It was trying to push, look at yesterday. It pushed on up there with that Amazon news, And then the earnings came and pow, right back down here, down towards the $11 right now. Peloton sees Q4 sales at 678.7 million, missing the 722.19 million estimate. Peloton EPS at a loss of $3.68, missing by $2.97, but big miss there on Peloton. And they've tried to do it all on Peloton. They've tried to raise membership fees, hike prices on some equipment, laid off thousands of workers, tested a rental option, exited the last mile delivery, transferred all of its production to third party, and still we're seeing this decline in Peloton. It just shows you that, you can try to throw everything at the kitchen sink, but something eventually has to stick. We'll see if Peloton is able to actually get this to come back on up and change the story, which is one that is pointing towards the downside. We'll see what happens there in Peloton. Let's catch up with the chat. Let's see what you guys voted on there. I want to take a look here. All right. Let's see. What do we got here? We got ones. We got some ones in there. I do see some twos. I see a 3 by Jesse. I can't blame you for being interested. And majority twos. So I guess not that many people do have the Peloton. I do know one, and that's Joel Elconin. You guys know Joel Elconin. He's on Pre-Market Prep and At the Close with me, and he has a Peloton. I always mess with him a little bit. I have like a video of him riding on a Peloton, but it's not really him. I just put his face on it. But we'll see what happens on Peloton. Does it ever get bought out? That's the questions that I would be looking at. But for right now, it looks like a story that isn't turning around anytime soon. All right, let's keep going. Let's go to the next story here. I did want to go ahead and get into some of the Boeing talk that's out there. Let's take a look how Boeing's performing. You see, Boeing has been really a strong stock as of late. I thought it would really start coming back down here towards the 150, and it just wants to hold on up. This is actually looking a lot better of a chart and trying to continue the gain here. It did fill that gap eventually. Now trying to come back up through that 172, getting towards the 200-day moving average, which is at 176.89. Now, what's been going on in the aircraft industry is that there's really tight supply, and this is causing the rent on a Boeing 737 to rise more than 20% between April 2020 and this July. This is causing a spike in prices, of course, on rent of the new Boeing 737 MAX and also competing Airbus. They're all just rising in price because of inflation and thus causing some issues for airlines to kind of pay up on their rent and just trying to figure out, it's not only the airlines that are passing it down to the consumer. It seems like their costs are going up also. So I can kind of understand why airline prices are so high. But at the same time, I'm like, man, come on. Can this inflation start coming back down so we don't have to keep hearing about it? Well, here's a perfect example. Boeing planes more expensive for the airlines, which are causing the airlines, of course, to keep the prices high. All right, let's get out of that Boeing talk. In a second, we're going to get into our interview. That's what it's all about here on Stock Market Movers, trying to get through all the headlines and getting to the expert opinions that you guys want to hear from. I still had one more topic that I'll touch. I'll try to get to it at the end, which was on Bank of America downgrading housing stocks. And you take a look at the housing stocks today. We'll see how Bank of America did on that. And also to mention that Ulta Beauty, Workday, and Affirm Holdings do have earnings after the close today. Like always, you guys can follow along with our Benzinga earnings calendar that is on our Twitter so that you guys know exactly what's coming on up. All right, let's go ahead. We're going to dive into our first interview today. We did talk about Hyliion and played the future of trucking, but this is actually going to be a live one here. I'm going to play a Benzinga Pro promo, and then we'll be diving into our interview.
Introducing portfolio synchronization with your brokerage. Now you can securely connect your brokerage account to Benzinga Pro, opening a world of personalization. Screen lightning fast news just for the stocks you own. Set alerts for news catalysts that affect only the companies you care about. It's all possible with a simple click and a secure protected connection. Overcome uncertainty and connect your portfolio to Benzinga Pro today.
All right, let's bring on my guest today, Tuan Nguyen, Ph.D. and economist at RSM. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Mitch, for having me. Before we start the show, I really want to say that even though I'm not a stock market expert, but I really love the format of the show, the interactive format of the show, and looking forward to the discussion.
Thank you. I love the feedback, and that's really what it's all about. I tried to make the show really action-packed, but then get to experts like you, and that's what it's all about, and getting into some deeper questions. You know, there's something that I can point at, everything under the sun, but there's always great to get to some expert opinions. So I appreciate you coming on. Like always, this isn't financial advice. This is for you guys out there to get the education needed to stay in the informational edge. Let's first go into it here. Now, RSM is definitely one of the best kind of ways to look at economy, right? That's what you guys do perfectly. Now, one of the things that I want to learn a little bit more about is the RSM US Supply Chain Index. Can you tell me about it and some of the use cases that we can use it for?
So we are really proud of the RSM US Supply Chain Index because the index tracks the supply chain disruption, the supply chain deficiencies very well in the past 10, 20 years, especially when you couple it with how you predict inflation, how you predict unemployment rate. And there's a piece of good news that we really want to show to everybody is that in July, the supply chain, the US Supply Chain Index was above neutral for the first time in nearly 3 years. What does that mean? That means that in any kind of inflation, supply chain induced inflation, we're going to see some relief in that space in a couple of months. Now, what's the implication for the Fed decision moving forward? Even though we're seeing some relief in terms of supply chain disruption, there are still a lot of problems, especially in the labor market, in the housing market, that we are still seeing supply chain induced inflation, supply chain induced deficit there.
Well, you kind of stated my next question there about how the RSM supply chain views inflation moving forward. You guys are seeing it looks like it starts to tickle down here. Now, I wanted to ask you, how do you feel about the economy? Do you feel the economy is strong right now?
We are in the camp of seeing the economy through the middle market lens, meaning that is more closely related to the real economy from companies which has a revenue from 10 millions to $1 billion. Now, we are following the couple of indicators from the NBR very closely: job gains, industrial production, spending, and income. And based on those indicators, we think that the economy is still very strong at the moment. And our forecast is showing that we're going to see an uptick in terms of GDP in the third quarter, and then in the fourth quarter. We don't see a lot of recession risk in this year, but obviously next year we're going to see a lot higher risk of recession.
Perfect. It was my next question there. It falls into recession, right? Are we in one now? Or do you feel that, especially if we're going to have a tick up, like you mentioned in GDP, this would kind of really come to question about the recession? What do you feel is truly here the measure that we should be watching?
We, again, followed the NBR indicators very closely. You have to follow job reports, you have to follow industrial production, income, and then spending. We don't look at GDP only as a measure of recession. Now, today, we also have another piece of good news from the second report, GDP, that not only we see an upward revision to GDP from minus 0.9% from the first report. Now we see minus 0.6%. Now, not only that, we see very strong data coming out of the gross domestic income number, which is another indicator that the NBR is looking at to identify recession. So we think using all of those indicators, we're not in a recession, but we are very close to a recession in 2023 next year.
Now, of course, everyone's watching what's going to happen out of the Jackson Hole Symposium. Everyone's all eyes on Fed Chair Jerome Powell. Do you guys feel that he's going to be more hawkish or dovish? Because a lot of people were starting to think, with inflation just starting to tick down a little bit, that he would start flipping back. How do you guys see it?
So if you look at the headline inflation number, we do think that inflation has peaked. However, the problem is not going to come from the headline inflation number. It's going to come from the core inflation number, especially the shelter and the labor component of it, wage growth. And we have seen wage growth has been a very concerning issue since the start of this year, and also shelter. Even though we see housing market is in the slum at the moment, housing prices are still very high, rents are very high. So we believe the Federal Reserve Chairman will be more hawkish tomorrow, especially when the market is pricing right in between 50 and 75 basis points for the next meeting. Obviously, next week, we're going to have data on job. And in 2 weeks, we're going to have data on CPI inflation. So those are all important indicators that's going to affect the Fed decision coming next month.
How do you guys feel about inflation in terms of energy as we're starting to get kind of another rise in oil here? Do you feel that we'll get a new all-time high in oil, or is there going to be some kind of price stability that you guys are looking for?
So in terms of energy inflation, we believe we're going to see another relief month in August because we're seeing gasoline price and energy price going down in the past couple of weeks, right? But we think that energy prices will go up a little bit, but not as high as what we saw in March or April, right at the onset of the Ukraine war. We don't think oil prices, gasoline prices going to be that high, but we're going to see some uptick in terms of gasoline and oil prices because the economy is bouncing back from the first 2 quarters of declining GDP.
All right. Well, thank you for joining me today, Tuan, Nguyen. I'm definitely going to have you back, Ph.D. and economist at RSM. Appreciate you coming on.
Thank you.
Have a great day. All right. That's going to do it for my interviews today. I hope you guys got something out of that because that's the important thing. You guys starting to notice the battle is now, is inflation truly peaked or is it going to come back? Because if it is truly peaking, then as you guys can see here, and I like how they have a supply chain index, because really that's what I've been watching too, really. It's the supply chain issues that are keeping that inflation high. When we look at rent, of course, there's some stickiness to the inflation. Prices are not going down immediately. But he did mention there how the housing recession is really starting to really be a term really used in the housing market. And that itself could start bringing the prices down, which would, of course, bring that inflation down also. So we'll keep on watch. There's a lot to talk about and watch in this situation. It's a very fluid one, right? It's moving every day, and we need to keep on watch energy. We need to keep on watch rent. Will those start coming down? That will bring inflation down, or will we see another spike? It's something that I'm definitely keeping my eyes on. All right, let's go towards the last conversation here. I did want to talk about housing, right? We literally just touched it right there. So let's take a look at Bank of America's downgrading of the housing stocks of KBH and also Lennar. Let's take a look at how those performed today. I thought this was interesting. When you see a stock get downgrade, it gets hit in the pre-market, and what happens at the open? Boom, straight up there. So I don't know what Bank of America was seeing, at least this morning, to kind of hit them on that one. But it did show a little bit of ticking on the daily chart. You could see them coming back a little bit. Maybe it was the Toll Brothers report that got them to go ahead and hit this. But Toll Brothers coming right back, right? Even though it got hit on that report, it's right back up there now towards the 48. So we'll see what happens with these KBH, Lennar. Will they come back? Another one that I'll tell you guys to keep a watch on is the ITB, which is a home construction ETF, something that I keep a watch on. And you can see it bouncing back a little bit there. So, hey, mixed signals in the housing situation, but we'll see what happens there. Any stocks that you guys want to cover, go ahead. This is your chance. We got about 4 minutes left here. I'll take some stocks from the chat and see what you guys want to go through. And of course, all eyes after the bell on Ulta Beauty, Workday, Affirm Holdings, and tomorrow, don't forget PCE, the focus of the Fed, and something that I think you guys should definitely keep on watch. The personal consumption expenditure, definitely keep that one on watch. Also, the core is going to be one that definitely is focused on. And this is coming out at 8:30 a.m. Eastern tomorrow before the Jerome Powell speech, which will be at 10 a.m. Eastern. Don't miss that either. All right, let's keep going. Don't agree with the timeline. I think recession could be sooner, but I like his perspective overall going into 2023. Can't disagree with that, Voodoo. I think it's something that we'll keep on watching. I think we're kind of in a recession already, but we're not going to get the technical term until we actually see some kind of spike in that jobs number. I think that that's really what is left here. If the labor market starts deteriorating, we're in a recession. All right, there you guys throwing up some stocks. I'll take a look at them right quick. Let's do these. Blade getting called out. And this is, of course, urban air mobility. This is one that I think is just a long-term reach. Do I think it's going to eventually do something? Maybe. I mean, I think the idea, the product, everything that they want to do sounds amazing. The question is, can they complete what they want to do? I think this is definitely one of those stocks that you're kind of just betting on something big. But if to each his own, if you guys like Blade Urban Air Mobility, and you guys think that this is actually going to get running in the next couple of years, then yeah, I have no problem with you guys taking a look at Blade. But in my eyes, it's tough to say that it's going to actually succeed. And I would look for the price or the product itself to start showing me some more kind of meeting the expectations versus me trying to jump in before this stock actually gets big. I'd leave it alone right now, but to each his own. All right, Coin. Coin is going to be all for me, I think, about what happens in Bitcoin. And I think eventually you take out these lows, eventually Coin could go down to maybe $30, $20. And that's, hard to think when this stock IPO'd up there at 360s. But I think that eventually, Coin is going to go down there. And once it goes down to about like $30, $25, that's probably around the level where I'd take a shot. But even then, I need to see the monthlies really change trend. If you take a look, I talk about this all the time when I'm ever looking at a stock and I'm wondering, hey, should I take a chance on a long-term position on here? Well, a lot of times I'll draw a monthly line to just take a look. How's the trend been? Have we really gotten back on up? No, we can't close up here towards the 100. So what we need to do is see a candle really break through this trend line and actually close up here. So that'd be a move towards, let's say, 100 or 120s. I haven't seen that with Coin. And until that changes, look at it on the weekly. Until this trend changes, I would leave it alone. I would just kind of draw a line and be like, if it gets above that, I can look bullish. Until then, I'm staying away. And I think for right now, at least for me, it's a stay away. Roku, let's take a look. Second, Tilray, I got you right after that. Roku coming down here today, and I think it could come back and just keep cracking. This is bouncing a little bit, ARKK names getting a little bit of a bounce here today. I think in the long run, though, you see Roku right back down. I haven't heard anything new about Roku. I know they wanted to get into more of their streaming and have even maybe some original content. It just, to me, seems like they're trying to survive through this period to eventually bring some growth back into the company. But for right now, I mean, you're back in kind of 2019, 2018 levels. And for that sake, I need to get back to, let's say, above 100 and really closing there for me to even think about Roku. And it just seems to me like this is one that's heading right back down. Tilray is up. And one thing that we can do, if you guys want to take a look about why stocks are moving, one of the things that I always like to do is, of course, just use Benzinga Pro. That's what it's for. That's the best ability of Benzinga Pro, is to tell you the news, right? And so I'm opening it for CGC right now, or we could take a look at Tilray also. But why is it moving? Well, we have some information coming in here. Do traders think that Canopy Group can keep climbing Thursday? We'll take a look there. Also, Tilray, the one that you guys really wanted to look at. Let me see if there's Tilray news. You can see here it's spiking up on volume. U.S. Cannabis Council and other marijuana players just made some key executive changes you should know about. Tilray, to guide patients on their medical cannabis journey, launches some new products and Canna Points program. So that's the news that hit this morning. Their new product and Canna Points program, giving them a little bit of lift. Of course, this is kind of what they're trying to, keep growing here. Let's take a look at the intraday action. You're seeing it get a little bit of a spike. This was around 11:50 a.m. Let me see if there's news on here. We have a volume spike. Looks like there isn't an actual catalyst at that exact time. If you guys know one at 11:50, let me know. But for right now, what I'm seeing is that news in the morning definitely got it going here. Let me see when CGC got that spike. Also at that 11:50. So let's take a look. Maybe it's on CGC that something hit at 11:50. No, it's still not there. I'm looking for it. Something hit around 11:50, or I'll even go to MSOS. That's another one that I like to follow. I've talked about this one. This is the US Cannabis ETF, one of my favorites. And look at the daily outlook. Nice little move today. I was looking at this yesterday to see if it was going to take that next step up, and it's really nice move up there. So if I had to take a look here, boom, advisory expands cannabis ETF offering and launches. Oh, looks like there's a 2x X leverage one today. MSOX. 2x leverage, that same one that we're looking at, MSOS, come out with this 2x leverage ETF. That's going up and driving a little bit of kind of news. And that one came out at 10:45. I don't know if that's the reason it ran, but I'll tell you one thing. Someone was definitely watching that. Looks like even there's more talks about that MSOS and this MSOX. So I think it's this one here. We'll see what happens if there's any cannabis news. Like always, one thing I would do is just look at Benzinga. That's one thing that we're the best at, is covering the cannabis industry. So I'm sure if there's some big news, we'll go ahead and have an article out on it. That's going to do it for me. It's 2:04. I went overtime. Got to get you over to the roadmap action. Please do me a favor, guys. Go check out my man, Chris Ketchy, talk about some NFTs coming on up. You don't got to go anywhere. I hope that you guys enjoyed today's show. We had a lot to talk about. You guys can see the topics we talked about at the bottom. I always scroll this before we get on out of here. Amazon Care, Tesla stock split, why China stocks are up, Plug Power, Amazon deal, Hyliion, stock market gainers, what moved today, earnings from NVIDIA, Snowflake, Salesforce, Splunk, Dollar General, Peloton, Boeing, and housing stocks. And we had 2 interviews like always. Hope you guys enjoyed the action-packed show that we do right here. Stock Market Movers. I'm your host, Money Mitch, and I'll see you next time. Come on over to At the Close. That's going to be at 3:30 if you guys want to continue the stock market content. Up next, the roadmap. Go ahead and check that on out, guys.